today's video, we will be discussing how human rights are being used as a tool for imperialism. Imperialism is a system where one country dominates another country or region for its economical, political, or cultural gain.
Imperialism is the domination of one country's political, economic, or cultural life by another. European countries had been establishing colonies and building empires since the late 1400s. Imperialism brought wealth and power to Europeans. But the people living in colonies were often oppressed, abused, and in some cases, even killed.
In 40 years, Europe gobbled up virtually all of Africa south of the Sahara. It happened with tremendous speed, with tremendous brutality. The purpose of this conquest, like most conquests in history, was to make money for the conquerors. And they did so hand over fist and killed millions of people in the process.
Most Europeans thought colonization was essentially a noble undertaking.
It has been a significant part of human history, and unfortunately, it is still prevalent today. One of the ways in which imperialism is being perpetuated is by using human rights as a tool to gain control over other countries or regions.
Where, after all, do universal human rights begin?
After World War II, it was clear that the horrors of the war should never be allowed to occur again. Founded in 1945, the United Nations sought to prevent future atrocities by affirming, in its foundational charter, faith in fundamental human rights, the dignity and worth of the human person, and a commitment to promote better standards of life in larger freedom. In the years that followed, member states of the United Nations strived to develop the human rights provisions of the Charter and capture them in a single document.
Human rights as a concept with philosophical and political roots in the French and American resolutions was inscribed by the West on the international agenda by establishing UN Human Rights Commission in 1946 and in 1948 by the adoption of Universal Declaration of Human Rights (UDHR) by the UN General Assembly, a document drafted under Western supremacy. This emphasis on human rights, life, liberty, equality, freedom of speech, movement, thought, opinion, and religion was
evolutionary process. It is the first occasion on which the organized community of nations has made a declaration of human rights and fundamental freedoms, and it has the authority of the body of opinion of the United Nations as a whole. And millions of people, men and women and children all over the world, will turn for hope and guidance and inspiration to this document.
While history alone can determine the historic significance of an event, it is safe to say that the declaration before us may be destined to occupy an honorable place in the procession of positive landmarks in human history.
The Declaration consists of a preamble and 30 articles.
ironic when most Asian and African countries were remained under colonial rule for years after UDHR and were denied all these rights and freedom by the West. Many developed countries claim to advocate for human rights and use this as an excuse to intervene in the affairs of other nations. They argue that they are promoting democracy, freedom, and equality, which are fundamental human rights. However, in reality, they are pursuing their self-interest, which often involve economic or geopolitical gain. For instance, the US government often justifies its military interventions in other countries by citing human rights violations. In many cases, these interventions have led to devastating consequences, such as Iraq War, which was based on false claims of weapons of mass destruction.
On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam
and led to deaths of hundreds of thousands of people. Similarly, the US government support the authoritarian regimes in the Middle East is often justified by the claiming that these regimes are necessary for the stability in the region. Imperial powers also use international organizations such as United Nations to impose their views on the other nations. They use their economic and political power to influence the decisions made by these organizations, often at the expense of weaker nations. For example, the US and its allies have been accused of using UN Security Council to legitimize their military interventions in other countries. Finally, it is evident that human rights are being used as a tool for imperialism by the Western world. The use of human rights as a justification for military intervention or the imposition of one's value on other nations is dangerous trend that undermines the sovereignty of weaker nations. It is essential to recognize the real motive behind these interventions and work towards a more equitable and just world that respects the rights of all nations and people. Thank you for watching the video.